Good damn afternoon, Americans. Jericho Green here with you once again. Make sure you check out jerichogreen.net and mygreengear.com. 15% off all green gear for a limited time. Also, I'm now on Truth Social. I'm on locals.com. I'm on Rumble, Spotify, Apple. Go ahead and hit that link tree. Check it out. Clickety clack. So what I want to talk about today is the Candace Owens documentary titled The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. It was a great documentary. A lot of the things, because of what I do for a living, I already knew as far as who they were paying money to and the amounts, but some of it I didn't know. Also, some of the things I didn't know were how the closest that you were to George Floyd, the less money you got, and in some cases, zero. And the further you were from George Floyd, the more money you got. And what I mean by that is they have people in this documentary. She interviews his roommates, the last people who lived with him, some of the last people he knew that saw him alive. And they got nothing. BLM, his family members, they said that some of his family members or none of his family members ever came to visit him. He lived with them for almost 5 years. No family, no cousins, no aunts, no parents, no aunts, uncles, nobody who shared his lineage came to visit him. And that was before he died. After he died, they didn't come to get his stuff. They didn't want his clothes. You know, I've had family members who have lost people close to them and they want to keep their clothes. Sometimes they make quotes out of them. Sometimes they just want to smell them. Sometimes they just want to smell them and be close to them again. But there's sentimental attachment to that person, so you want some of their belongings. And it may not be valuable. Like, again, it could be clothes, could be, you know, a ring they had or something, or, I don't know, a jacket they always wore, but nothing. So they didn't come to visit him, and they didn't want any of his things, any of his effects after he died. So I think it just proves the point, and I've thought this too, that they treated George Floyd like the drug addict that he was. His family was done with him. They were fed up. Maybe they didn't care about him in the first place. But he was a drug addict. He lived that life, and maybe that's the reason, or maybe not, but his family didn't fuck with him. Nobody. And his roommates said that the George Floyd that has run-ins with the police and how he was sitting in the front seat with his drug dealer, that George Floyd they didn't know. At home, they said he was a different person. He was kind. He wasn't on drugs. They never saw any paraphernalia, any dope fiend type activity. But whatever he did that was bad was done outside of that house. They never saw that from him. And again, also what I mean by the closer you were to him, the less money you got, is those people knew him. They lived with him. That's the real person who we send out in the world sometimes is a representative. Sometimes it has to be. You can't be like you are at home everywhere. But they didn't get anything. All these tens of millions of dollars changing hands, going into accounts, going to groups that claim to represent him, using him as a stepping stone to that money, they didn't get any. But the people who had nothing to do with him, but could just claim themselves as his family, they got money. They got the $27 million from the city of Minneapolis. They got all this money from BLM and BLM itself. They built this off the backs of Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and George Floyd. George Floyd, it was that rocket booster that they hit to stardom. And none of the real people who really knew him, his real friends, got shit. But all the people claiming to know him, all the people willing to get in front of the camera and act like a jackass, they got the money. But they didn't give a shit about him. 5 years? Tell me somebody you know that you're close to that's a friend, a real friend, and you haven't seen them for 5 years and they live across town. I know it's possible to have people you love and care for and you don't see them for a while, but they probably live far away. Right across town, cousin, uncle, brother, and you don't see him for 5 years. You don't go visit him. Okay, but you're on TV. Oh, George Floyd, why? Okay. So she talks about that. She talks about Officer Chauvin, the guy who was convicted of murdering George Floyd, which I don't think he murdered him, really. But they talk to his co-workers, his friends. They show pictures of him. You get to see the other side of him. You get to see the side that wasn't demonized by all the blue check marks and the mainstream mediocres. And I've talked about this before, and what really let me know that this was some bullshit. There's the famous footage, the infamous footage that we've all seen is from the front. There's a bystander recording something, and it says her name in there, but her name's not important. But she's filming from the angle where you see from the front, where you see Officer Chauvin and the other officers on him, and Officer Chauvin's knee is right here. And from that angle, it looks like it's on his neck, coupled with him saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, which he said way before they even took him out of the car. When they tried to put him in the backseat of the police car saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And George Floyd asked to be laid on the ground. That's something I didn't know. He asked to be laid on the ground. There's audio and video of him saying, put me on the ground, lay me on the ground, lay me on the ground. So he asked to be put there. It wasn't during a struggle. They slammed him there or placed him there. He asked to be put there. Something I knew before, but the officer, one of the officers, was standing by, and I don't know if it was Chauvin or not, but he was standing. They had him in the back of the patrol car with the window down, and he's standing there saying, I'm claustrophobic, let me out. So he's standing there talking him down, saying, it's okay, I'm not going to leave you, I'll be right here. Not the actions of a racist, not the actions of a murderous racist who is about to purposefully, intentionally choke this man to death in a few minutes. So he's standing there telling him, I'm right here, I'm not going to leave you. Also, the chief of police at the time, who was also black, so was he a white supremacist too? He testifies under oath, and there's another camera angle from one of the body cams on the police officers who's behind Chauvin, and you can see Chauvin's knee is on his shoulder blade. I'm no doctor, I don't own any white coats or stethoscopes, but I do know that there's no vital organs here in your shoulder. I do know that that's not stopping airflow or blood flow if you lean on somebody's shoulder. Is it uncomfortable? Probably. And I also said this before, the optics weren't good. The optics of a bunch of cops laying on a person and them saying, I can't breathe, and their knee looks like it's on his neck. Those are bad optics. I think once he's cuffed and laying on the ground, I don't see a need for the police to be on him. I know in some cases, if a guy's showing he's going to be violent or something, or maybe he was violent before they put him on the ground, then I could understand the cops kneeling on him. I'm not saying that. I'm not stupid. But in this case, the guy asked to be on the ground. There was some resisting of arrest, but it didn't get violent. He just didn't want to be in handcuffs, but it didn't get violent. And also, let's be honest, George Floyd's size maybe played into the way that they handled him. He was 6'7", probably 275 pounds, muscles everywhere. It was a big dude. So maybe that played a part in how they handled him. Maybe they felt they needed more officers because of his size. And if he did get violent, that is going to be a problem because most police officers aren't 6'7", 275 pounds. So she played in the very first frame, the very first scene is surveillance footage from inside the store where he passed the counterfeit 20, because that's what started this all. He passed the counterfeit 20. They interviewed the guy who was at the store who called the police. They interviewed the people who were there. And their policy is if somebody comes with a counterfeit bill, they tell them it's a counterfeit, we don't want it. The person takes it and walks off, whatever. But if the person refuses or wants them, no, you need to take it, then they call the police and the police come deal with it. That's what happened. They told him it was a counterfeit, we don't want it. He pressed the issue, they called the police. That's called policy. And he said 99% of people will just take the money and leave. They don't want any problems. They don't want the cops called because usually people who are dealing with counterfeit bills are doing some nefarious shit. I'm sure it's a federal offense to be passing counterfeit bills because A real dollar bill is a promissory note from the federal government. So that's probably a federal offense. So most people doing that shit, they're out. They don't want the cops called. For some reason, Floyd was pushing the issue. That's why they called the police. The officers who initially responded to the call were not Officer Chauvin. He was called as a supervisor. He was called for backup. All right. He was called to the scene to get backup with this big ass dude who wasn't going along with the program like he was supposed to. And it's showing all that footage. You're talking to people who are involved. She talks to an expert who says that his job is to basically find out what happened. He don't give a damn what, group you're going after, who can potentially get in trouble, a police department or whoever. He's there to do his job. And they also show footage from the doctor who did the autopsy. And he says that take away everything else that happened, take away George Floyd's interaction with the police that day, he still would have died from a lethal dose of fentanyl mixed with methamphetamine. He had fentanyl and methamphetamine in his system to a lethal amount. There was lethal levels in his body. So had he not gone to that store that day, had he not left the house that day, chances are he still would have dropped dead because of that lethal cocktail. Plus, he had an enlarged heart. And so his heart is working overtime. You mix that with the cocktail of drugs. You mix that with the stress of being under arrest and being placed under arrest and dealing with the police. That is very much would have killed him. So it wasn't Chauvin who did that. Again, should they have been leaning on him while he was in cuffs? No, but maybe they felt they should. This guy's a fucking giant. And I didn't know this either, but they had an autonomous zone. They have an autonomous zone in Minneapolis. I thought that was some Portland and some Seattle bullshit, but they have an autonomous zone in Minneapolis right there where George Floyd died. They even have, a little makeshift shrine set up for him. There's teddy bears and flowers, and some artist came and drew a picture of an angel, like the angel was laying on the ground on the pavement. That's where he actually died. And, it's people don't walk there because that's where he died and shit. It's so stupid. Anyway, so there's an autonomous zone there, and I didn't know that. And autonomous zone means in Minneapolis what it means everywhere else. No cops, no nothing. They stay out of there. It's run by itself. And he said that the violence got so bad there that they had a school bus that was converted into a trauma center. And the number one injury they were dealing with was gunshot wounds. So this black life, it's terrible that he lost his life and police brutality. So naturally you deal with that by shooting each other. That's obvious, right? You don't get organized, change policy, protest in a peaceful manner. You just start shooting each other, and that changes everything magically. So for some reason, a bunch of people were getting shot in this autonomous zone where they didn't want the police. And there was an African guy who was an immigrant, came here in 87. And I thought to him, I even said out loud to my wife, we were watching, I was like, damn, he came from Africa and ended up in Minnesota? And the documentary takes place in the wintertime. I was like, how the fuck did he pull that off? He must not have. That was before the internet. He didn't know shit about Minneapolis. He didn't know about those winters. But she's asking him, says, how does it make you feel that people treat somebody like this and they don't even act like this going to church? You don't have people coming to church like this, but they act like this for a person. He's like, I think it's disgusting. I think it's terrible that people would act in this way and come out in these droves for a person, but not for Jesus. And it's destroyed the community. There's boarded up buildings. It's a ghost town. The businesses have left because there's no protection, because there's no police. So if there are no businesses, then there are no jobs. If there are no jobs, then there's poverty. And this is all the aftermath of George Floyd. So wait a minute. It's worse now after? Isn't it supposed to be better? Wasn't there supposed to be more money and more attention paid to this city? But it's worse now. Businesses have gone. It's all boarded up. It looks like there's about to be a hurricane coming through there. All the damn boards up. And this is right where it happened. This is where George Floyd died, right there. And it's absolutely terrible. And there's a big sign that says, basically, you're entering the autonomous zone. Enter at your own risk. And Another thing that was weird is, oh, and first of all, BLM was started by Patrisse Cullors and these two other angry lesbians. The guy that trained them, because they say we are trained Marxists. There's no, we got to read between the lines and really listen to what they say. They say the words, we are trained Marxists. We are trained Marxists. 4 words, they say them. And they were trained by a guy named Eric Mann, who is a career activist, this white dude. So BLM, Black Lives Matter, was started by a white guy. I know, stupid. But another thing is Patrisse Cullors, she's the most vocal one. She's the one with the Toll House chocolate chip right here, the Aaron Neville tribute on her forehead. I don't know much. And she is a lesbian now, like I said. But she used to be straight because she has a kid. And then despite all the bullshit they try to push, we know there's only one way to get that kid. But so she had, and maybe it's easier. I imagine it is easier for women to switch teams because you're going to another woman, and women are, women, and they're beautiful and they got titties and vaginas. So I guess it would be easy, but just think about it, fellas. How bad would a woman have to do you? How dirty would you have to be done by a woman? How terrible would this woman be to make you want dick now? Like she burned you so bad. I don't know what, she cheated on you, stole from you, both. But what would a woman have to do to where you give up on vagina altogether and start fucking dudes? I don't know if that's possible, but apparently it happens all the time with women. So she is straight. Now she's gay. And she's married to this dude. She's married to this woman, and it's like Jalen or something. I don't even remember her fucking name. The important thing is she's married to this woman, and this woman got top surgery. That means she had her titties removed and throw them in the garbage. So somewhere there's 2 perfectly good titties that she just didn't want anymore. And she got top surgery, and she looks like a dude. She always has a scowl on her face. She's always looking hard and, always just mugging and shit. Like, I guess that's what we do as men. I guess men are just always like this. That's what she thinks. And so she got top surgery, tossed her titties in the dumpster, and she's non-binary now. But how come, if she's non-binary, then why does she try to look like a man? If you're non-binary, you don't subscribe to the social construct of women are like this and men are like that. You're neither, but you look like a man. You have the chest of a man, and you think you look like, you're trying to look like what you think a man is, but you're non-binary. What the fuck ever. So they bought this building. They allocated $8 million to this Toronto property, and they only ended up spending $6 point something million on the property. So whatever happened to the 1 point something million to make 8, I don't know. But they bought this property, the BLM bought this property in Toronto, and it's under Patrisse Cullors' wife's name. And she went down this list, because she has her tax return. She went down this list of all these businesses and entities that they gave money to. $200,000, $400,000, $600,000, $200,000, $200,000. And all of it added up to, I think, around $3 or $4 million. And she lists the groups. And all of these groups that they gave money to were Ku Klux Trans groups. So-and-so for the integration of Ku Klux Trans members into our society. And trans activists and trans rights and trans. And then the Trans Ams and the transactions and all the trans you could think of. That's what they donated their money to. None of these organizations on their website, she showed the website, she showed their web pages. None of them were for black folks. None of them were for the black community. It was for trans. And if it was black, it was black trans and black transis and trans. What is it? 6 black trans people, including this nutty fucker that she married. But that's where the money for BLM is going to. Properties for them and Ku Klux Trans organizations. Because that's what's important for black folks is Ku Klux Trans members. Transformers or Transams, whatever you want to call them. That's what this money is for? That's what you burn this country down for? That's why you're taking this money for, is to give to a bunch of fucking mentally ill people? And they're not trying to help their mental illness. It would be different if this was going to combat the mental illness that these people are dealing with. No, it's making it worse. Here, no, you're totally normal. Here's more money. And when you watch this, you'll know who I'm talking about. There's some famous Ku Klux trans member. This dude looks like Jabba the Hutt if you put him in a girl's Sunday school outfit. It is an absolute fucking disgrace that you are giving money to people like this, who are obviously nuttier than squirrel shit. He looks like a fucking man that put a bow in his hair and a dress on. Don't change his voice. No facial augmentation. No shave this down. Make this more feminine. It's a big ass dude and a bow and a dress, and it looks fucking horrible. And you're supposed to just look at this dude and be like, yeah, that's totally normal. What's the problem? Here, take my daughter to prom. What's the problem? Look at this. Look at Patrice Cullors' wife, husband, whatever you want to call that fucking weirdo. Look at him. That's who they're giving their money to. All you fools that got suckered by BLM, that's what they're giving their money to, so all of these weirdos can have top surgeries and throw their titties in a big pile. You dumbasses. And these groups that they gave all the money to, none of them have filed their taxes. None of them. They just took the money, and that's it. Some of them, you go on to click on their webpage, coming soon. And she breaks down how they have people or companies and stuff accept the money on behalf of BLM. Because of all these loopholes and shit that they have to get the money. It's a scam. She lays it all out. She tells you exactly what they're doing, who did what, footage you've never seen, people being talked to that, like his roommates. You don't recognize those people's faces. You recognize Ben Crump, maybe his brother, not Ben Crump, but George Floyd's brothers. And then she shows footage of his daughter supposedly saying, say his name. You can hear somebody saying, say it again. Say his name. That girl, the look on her face says, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be up here in front of all these people. She is so nervous. She has her hands in her mouth. She's trying to hide behind these group of adults, shoving her into the spotlight. It is fucking sad. And everything that you told yourself, that you knew about it, all this stuff, you're like, that can't be right. That's a lie. That's bullshit. You're right. You are 100% right. It is bullshit. It is a scam. It is a lie. People are stupid who gave them money. Absolutely terrible. But I recommend that you watch this, because if nothing else, you will be reassured in exactly what you thought. And you'll get new information from it too. But it's exactly what you thought. BLM is a scam, and anybody that has anything to do with them is a fucking liar. And then it shows footage of Biden saying, well, I hope the trial, the Chauvin trial, I hope they reach the right verdict. What's the right verdict, Sloppy Joe? And then the mayor of Minneapolis, who looks like a distant cousin of Gavin Newsom, is against the police. You're supposed to have their back. How about cooler heads prevail and let's see what the evidence is. Let's let the jury do their job. Don't take sides. Be down the middle. Be neutral. No, he couldn't do that. He took a side. He took the side that his corporate handlers told him to take. Just a feckless, weak, spineless bitch. That's what that mayor, I don't know if it's the same mayor now, but the mayor of Minneapolis at the time of this George Floyd bullshit, the patron saint of fentanyl, Mr. 5 funerals and a golden casket himself. That ought to tell you everything you need to fucking know. But The Greatest Lie Ever Sold, great documentary. I recommend you check it out. That's my thoughts on it. You tell me what you think in the comment section. But you know how it goes. I try to be done with the left, but they just won't let me. Please subscribe. Hit that notification bell because every time it rings, a piece of shit lefty cries. Utilize the Linktree link. Get your ass over to JerichoGreen.net and mygreengear.com. I am Jericho Green. Man, I'm out.